Hello my dear friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about the advanced estimates of CSO or the Central Statistical Office. So let us first understand what is the current affair. The Central Statistical Office or the CSO has recently released the first advanced estimates of economic growth of India. So with this current affair we will analyze what is the advanced estimates according to CSO. Let us first understand the estimates of CSO regarding the growth scenario in Indian economy. So according to CSO, the Central Statistical Office expects GDP or the gross domestic product at 7.2% in the year 2018-19. So in the financial year 2018-19, CSO expects a growth rate, that is GDP growth rate of 7.2%. So it is an advanced estimate and the final estimate will be available after the financial year. So this is the advanced estimate, and according to this estimate there is an improvement over the previous year, that is in the financial year 2017-18 the GDP growth rate was 6.7%. So compared to the previous financial year there is a improvement in the GDP growth rate, and GDP is the monetary value of all the final goods and services produced in an economy within a financial year. But even though compared to last financial year, even though there is an improvement in the GDP growth rate, the most significant aspect of the latest estimates by CSO is that there is a clear deceleration in the growth momentum. That means in the second half of the financial year, the growth is coming down compared to the first half. The first half of the financial year witnessed a growth rate of around 7.6%. This is the first half of the financial year growth rate. Now, if we take the quarter-wise estimates, that is the financial year is divided into 4 quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. So, if we compare quarter-wise growth rate, in the first quarter, the growth rate was 8.2%. In the second quarter, the growth rate dipped down to 7.1%. So, we see that as the financial year progresses, in the quarters and also in the half-yearly estimates, there is a decrease in the growth rate. And according to the advanced estimates of CSO, the full year advanced estimates is 7.2% growth of GDP, and in the first half it was 7.6%. So if we take the half yearly estimates, we will find out that from 7.6 to 6.8 is the decrease in the GDP growth rate in the second half of the financial year. That is why the average of the total year is 7.2%. So in the first half it was 7.6%. In the second half it is estimated to be around 6.8%. Altogether culminating into 7.2% growth rate in the entire financial year. And this is the advanced estimates according to CSO. And this dip or decrease in the growth rate is seen in most of the sectors. In agricultural sector, in the services sector, in the manufacturing sector, in the industrial sector. So almost in all of the major sectors, this dip or decrease in the growth rate is evident. If we take an example of the manufacturing sector, the manufacturing sector is expected to grow at a growth rate of 8.3% in the 2019 financial year. And compared to the financial year 2018, this is a significant improvement because the growth rate in financial year 2018 was only 5.7%. So, in the manufacturing sector, if we compare the growth rate of 8.3% with that of previous financial year, that is financial year 2018, it is a significant improvement from 5.7% to 8.3%. But what is the concern here? In the first half of the year, the manufacturing sector estimated a growth rate of around 10.3%, and in the second half it came down to 6.4%. So this is the cause of concern. From the second half onwards there is a decrease, and altogether this accounts for 8.3%. So coming to the second half of the financial year, almost all the sectors have experienced a slowdown. And also on the expenditure side of the national income accounts, both the private expenditure or the private consumption as well as the government consumption is expected to moderate or come down. So this will also impact the growth because demand will come down. When consumption comes down, demand comes down, and therefore it will impact the output, and output will impact the GDP, and a reduction in GDP will impact the economic growth. So this is the estimate about the growth scenario in the financial year 19. Now coming to the investment prospect. Investment is also called the gross capital formation or the gross fixed capital formation. So the GCF or the gross capital formation is expected to rise sharply in the second half of the financial year. And according to the advanced estimates, there is a 12.2% rise in the gross capital formation or in the investments compared to the 7.6% in the previous financial year, that is financial year 2018. And the report has also highlighted a 30% drop in the new investment projects taken up between December 2016 to December 2018. So these are the highlights of the report regarding investment. Now let us understand what is the dispute in this advanced estimates by the CSO. So the estimate has come up with a growth estimate of 7.2% for financial year 2018-19 for the Indian economy. But this 7.2% estimated growth rate is below the expectation of most of the financial institutions like the RBI, IMF, World Bank, etc. So there are various institutions which is mapping the Indian economy or which is estimating the growth rate of Indian economy. Say for example, RBI, Reserve Bank of India, is the apex monetary institution in the country. And RBI has estimated a growth rate of 7.4% for Indian economy in the 2019 financial year. And coming to IMF, International Monetary Fund, IMF also expected the economy to grow by around 7.4% in this financial year. And according to the Union Finance Ministry estimates, it was 7.5% for the current fiscal year. So various institutions estimated the growth rate for Indian economy above the advanced estimates of the CSO, and that is the reason for this disappointment by the advanced estimates of CSO. Now let us understand how does the future picture look like. We have seen that the Union Finance Ministry estimated a growth rate of around 7.5% for the Indian economy in the current financial year. But the advanced estimates projects only 7.2% growth rate for the current financial year. But even then, India will remain as one of the fastest growing major economy in the world. But even when India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, there are some factors that can possibly drag down the growth of Indian economy in the second half. We have seen that compared to the first half of this financial year, there is a drop down in the economic growth in the second half of this financial year, and there are certain factors that can again bring down the growth rate of Indian economy. And among them, one major factor is the fiscal deficit. So what is fiscal deficit? It is the excess of government expenditure over the revenue of the government. So when the expenditure side is higher than the revenue side, it is called fiscal deficit. And in order to meet the budget expenditure, government will have to borrow. So it will lead to borrowings. And the target of the government was to maintain the fiscal deficit within a range of 3.3% of the GDP. And now if we compare the last 8 months of fiscal deficit in this particular financial year, in the last 8 months itself, it has crossed 112% of the full year target. That means government is unable to meet the fiscal target which the government has made. It was 3.3% of GDP. But government has already crossed it within the first 8 months of the current fiscal year. And this is a major cause of concern. And in this context of increasing fiscal deficit, the CSO estimates, that is the advanced estimates, are very important and very significant in order to provide a foundation for the preparation of interim budget. So when government prepares the interim budget, government should keep in mind the fiscal deficit as well. Because government has to ensure that the expenditure side and the revenue side almost balances, or there is no high rates of dissimilarities between the expenditure and the revenue. In the month of February, the government will come out with the interim budget because the general elections are ahead and government will not come out with a full-fledged budget, but instead government will be coming out with the interim budget. And when government prepares the interim budget, government will have to keep in mind this very important factor, that is fiscal deficit. So, government must make sure that the fiscal deficit does not go beyond the control of the government. In that case, the CSO advanced estimates is very significant. You can find the PDF of this lecture on my Facebook page, and for any queries regarding your UPSC preparations, you can get in touch with me on my Facebook page, or you can email me at joyce.studyiq@gmail.com. Thank you.